I'm Bryan Caplan. I'm a professor of economics at George Mason University. I've written a bunch of books on a bunch of topics. I write about democracy, education, fertility, immigration, and now I have this new book on housing.
Why housing? Why now?
Very often at lunch, we go and we torture our visitors and we say, all right, so what are the most important questions in the world? And then why aren't you working on them?
Right.
But I do take that to heart. It's like, well, yeah, I guess I should be working on the really important questions. The main reason I got into this topic is I just read some academic papers saying not just the obvious thing that housing regulation is raising prices, but saying the not obvious thing that housing regulation has increased prices a lot.
Right.
So this is not just like a tiny issue. And then you realize, wait a second. So we raised prices a lot on one of the very largest items in people's budgets. Then so that sounds like a pretty big deal. Then after this, I started noticing that there's just a lot of other papers on all of the additional bad side effects of this more obvious change. Things like when you raise the price of this basic necessity a lot, it's especially bad for the poor, so you're increasing inequality. Things like when you make it a lot more expensive for someone to get their first house, you're going to be reducing fertility.
Wow.
So it just turns out there's just a lot of particular issues that seem completely unrelated that all actually trace back to this single problem, which is why in my book I've got a chapter called The Panacea Policy. And if people knew the Greek mythology better, I would probably have made it the title of the book. However, Panacea is the Greek goddess of universal remedy. A panacea is a cure-all. I don't literally mean to say that making it easy to build homes will cause every problem on earth to go away. But in the broad scheme of things, how many other policy reforms are likely to make a big dent in a whole bunch of different problems that people keep talking about and often saying each individual problem is intractable? It's like, look, not only are they not individually intractable, we got one simple solution that will simultaneously go and help a lot of them.
Yeah. And you mentioned about, issues that governments are maybe doing as far as regulation. Is there one regulatory thing that maybe local government or state government could do right now that would make homes more affordable? Have you gotten to that point?
Yeah. So there's so many things, but I guess probably the one that I would focus on, given the way you worded your question, is just minimum lot sizes.
Yeah.
This is something where areas that have low density still, there's likely to be a minimum lot size. Usually it's binding, especially if there is a big piece of land. The builder is generally going to want to just go and put a whole lot of houses on that one piece of land. Right. And normally local regulations will say, no. Every house has to have a big piece of land. And it's like, well, why? And it's like, well, that's nicer. That's the way it ought to be. And then it's like, well, why is the builders don't want to do what people want? And the answer is, well, in some sense, people want a lot of land if it's free, if the price is really low. But one big result to come out of all this research is most home buyers are not willing to pay anything close to market price for a lot of extra land. People might want a few feet around. And then if it was free, they might want 1,000 square miles. But if it's, you're either going to get a quarter acre that you pay for, or you get, or there's a full acre and you got to pay for the whole thing, including all of the homes that don't get built because you had to have so much land, then you wind up discovering people don't actually want vacant land all that much.
Right. And can you think of, I don't want to put too much into your future book as far as it's coming out. Your book is coming out May. What time in May?
May 1st. Yeah, okay. A week from Wednesday.
And it is called what?
Build, Baby Build, The Science and Ethics of Housing Regulation.
All right. That is really cool. Well, we're excited to see you out here on Thursday. And I guess in closing, I kind of wanted to hear a little bit about what are you hoping to see in terms of people that come out to this event, or just kind of the work overall coming here to Texas?
Well, so during COVID, I got to spend about 3 months in Texas. I had some friends out there, and we got to escape from the extreme lockdown that was going on in Virginia. Got a lot of friends in the area. And yeah, it's a really cool place just to drive around and see how short a distance you have to drive from a central city to get prices down. Now, once you get used to those prices, they don't seem low anymore, right? But, like you go about halfway between Austin and San Antonio and you see brand new homes, like 4 bedrooms for $300,000.
Right.
And people there is like, oh, that's still really expensive. Like, not according to most people in large other areas of the country. You've got a system that's not perfect, but definitely a lot better than most. Especially the average level, the general level of regulation is quite low. In particular, downtowns, it may still be fairly bad. But the nice thing is you only have to drive half hour, 45 minutes before you're back in an area where building stuff is just not that hard and stuff is cheap. Right. What's pretty striking is that actual pro-housing activists tend to be fairly left-wing people living in major democratic cities. They're starting in an environment where the regulation is really strict and they're trying to make things a little bit better. On the other hand, if you want to know, well, where are things the best, then I think it is in states like Texas, where people do not really turn it into an ideological issue. It's not like there's a big cause or a big movement. It's more of just taken for granted that people build stuff and it's not going to be that hard. So that's sort of the interesting case. There's like the places in the country, the closest to being models, don't really think of themselves as doing anything unusual or thoughtful. It's just, that's the way it is. You have to go and see places that are screwed up to realize that typical town in Texas is just a lot better. It just has a much better attitude towards the construction industry, just not viewing someone building homes as a criminal, which is a very strange attitude. I mean, if you looked at farmers and said those horrible jerks, it's like, well, like they grow food. Like, well, like they want money to go and grow food. Well, don't you want money to do your job? Why are you mad at them? And yet for the second most important necessity of housing, there is this very deep-seated resentment. Since I am getting to talk to a public audience, I just like talking to people. I like anytime there's curiosity. I don't like talking to people who are angry. A lot of the reason why I liked going and writing a book in this format is I don't think you mentioned it, but this book is actually a nonfiction graphic novel. So if you open it up, it looks like a comic book.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to go and entertain people as they learn the research. There's a lot of research that's great, but it's just so boring to most people. And I just want to figure out a way to get people to pay attention. But another problem besides things being boring is just people being angry. So I try to use humor to make people feel better about learning something new and say, this is not something we need to yell at each other over. So let's just go and take a look at the world, describe it as it is, not be going out of our way to find people to demonize, just see what's going on.
Yeah. Well, that is awesome. And we're really excited for Mr. Bryan Caplan to come out to Texas, Bryan College Station on Thursday, the 25th at 5:30 p.m.
This Thursday.
This Thursday coming up. We wanted to get a little just kind of preview of what you have going on, and we're really excited to be talking about this. Thank you so much for coming out.